Just like that, there we are. Triple T number 87. 87. Holy smokehouse papa. Right here on August 29th, 2023, almost to September. Wow. Yes, going quickly now. And shout out for our friends in Florida. Just been texting with Linda, who's not sure if she'll be able to make it tonight or not. Mother Nature's gonna give them a little bit of a pressure wash, the way it sounds. We'll leave it at that. So sending protective energies to all of those in line of the storm. And back to the introductions. My name's TJ Zebel. I call myself a professional problem solver, which I quickly have to follow up with. No, I don't know all the answers, but I'm really good at asking questions and helping find answers. And if I don't find the answers, I know a lot of people that I can refer you to find the answers. Yes, I got a lot of wallpaper behind me. I get to do a lot of things. I help people with depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD. I work with professional athletes for performance enhancement. I do corporate coaching. And we'll leave the rest of the list because we've only got 2 hours. I do have a website, thetswb.com, thetallskinnywhiteboy.com. Yes, that's what it stands for. I also offer a free 30-minute consultation. That is your chance to spend 30 minutes with me and see if I can help you with any challenges you may have, or if you just want to chit-chat, pick my brain, it's your time. For those watching live on YouTube, hi, Mom. Yes, I love getting to do that. She says hi back, but she's on the recording, so it's there. It's the thought that counts. And as long as we're talking YouTube, please click the subscribe, ring the bell, click the like, leave comments. Lots of comments, even on ones you didn't comment on, and those that you did comment on, just go comment some more. You know, practice commenting. And that's the intro side. Anybody got anything they want to share from the last 7 days since we were here? Yes, no, Yes.
I will share. So a couple of weeks ago, I started to be more open-minded about manifesting. And then I realized a very big aha that I don't know if anybody else has done this. When you want something and you didn't get it and it didn't work out, and I'm depending on however big the dream was that you had wanted and it didn't come to fruition, you get a little burned by it and it's a little upsetting. So I, for the longest time, kind of thought that I had, I wasn't very good at it, and I wouldn't allow myself to go more than like 2 or 3 months out. So now I actually started allowing myself permission to lean into what I want, but also realizing that the strategies that I had before weren't working, and I changed the strategy. So I'm leaning into it more, but I think the big thing was allowing yourself permission. And for the longest time, I wouldn't even allow myself permission to say anything that I wanted. So I thought that was really powerful.
Yay! And it's interesting coming from a person who a number of years ago, and not that long ago, manifesting was kind of like that. Yeah, that sounds nice. I'm sure it works for some people. You know, lucky them. Wish I could do it. and then was taught the correct way to do it, and things started showing up, and I was like, wait a minute. And then you guess it. You're like, well, did this just happen because it just happened, or did this happen because I manifested something? And the answer came back, why does it matter? You got it. Thank the universe. Be grateful that you got it. Use it properly.
I didn't see that response coming. Why does it matter? Wow.
Well,
I'm somebody who always needs like a clear-cut answer, not like, why does it matter? That doesn't settle well in my brain. My brain's like, because it matters.
okay, why does it matter?
Because I got to know.
Would it make what you manifested worth any less if you found out that it was just happenstance, or it was because you actually put in the correct process of manifesting it?
Because I like there to be a method rather than so non-tangible. I like the process of A plus B equals C, 1 + 1 = 2. I like that. So I know I can predict what happens. And sometimes when it comes to manifesting and then it surprises you, you're like, oh, nice surprise. Why are you here and why weren't you here sooner? Or where's this other stuff coming? Like, there's other people, they always pop on stage.
Well, the nice thing is, it's your process and you can label it whatever you want.
That is true. But then I feel like sometimes I'm making stuff up.
And it still shows up. So
yes, but then we get into the whole conversation of what's real and what's made up and who's real and who's an alien. And
splitting hairs, chasing squirrels. And I get it.
And Linda was going to manifest before we know it, and she's going to try and explain the whole universe to me in 5 seconds. And I'm still going to have more questions, even though it'll make perfect sense when she says it.
And the best part is, just be grateful for all you have, whether you have an explanation for how it got there or not.
That is true.
I started the projects, the stuff that shows up for some of the projects I'm working on, full on manifesting. A lot of people know that I'm almost finished with a full remodel on our apartment. And I would challenge many, many contractors out there to accomplish the work that I did on the budget that I did, because things just manifested at 50 to 70% off constantly, including stuff that I bought before we moved here. It was on what I like to call a stupid price sale. And I'm like, hey, that's a stupid price. I think I'll take it. I don't know why. And I get it out here, and it fit exactly what I needed for the project. And I'm like, apparently 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, the universe knew that I had this project coming up and that I was working on manifesting it. Yesterday, I had a busy day, and I needed 2 decent sheets of plywood for a project I was working on in the shop. Showed up at my favorite other home, Depot, and just happened to be in the discount rack. 2 perfect sheets, perfect enough to be discounted perfect for the application that I needed to finish the project.
I love that. That's awesome.
So do I question how they showed up? Celebrate. They're there. Yay! And so here we got to start off with manifesting. I suppose I should probably get that on the list so that I can remember to put it in to the notes. And somebody told me that when they are looking for my recordings on YouTube, they cannot see the notes unless they click to open up the video. I'm curious if I'm the only one that can see the actual notes when I go to my channel. Yes, I figured somebody would be kind enough to be researching that at the speed of the internet.
Better than dial-up.
Yeah.
So it says a little bit when you're on the computer, and then it'll say a little summary, and then it'll say more. So like last week's is Triple T 86, the L word, Major League Living lessons, questions, know your outcome, get why and what, divine pleasure from practice and resilience. And then it says, please leave a comment. But it might also be different on the app versus in Safari.
Okay.
Or in Google.
Well, that's why I like to ask questions to find out from outside sources. And while you are diligently helping with that research, the topics for this week, and they died, Wizard of Oz and Prison or Sanctuary. And ironically, the first two are from movies. You wouldn't happen to know where "and they died" came from. An animated film called The Croods.
Croods. Right?
Correct.
Croods. Yeah.
Yes.
I have not seen it in its entirety. Only seen the coming attraction, which is surprising for me, given the fact that it pretty much is guaranteed to be a happy story by the end.
Well, it's without trying to get into too much trouble, it's an old enough.
Spoiler alert.
It's an old enough animation to let your kids see. But it's caveman, and Dad had something. Yes, spoiler alert. But Dad had something happen to him at a young age, and so he was handed this programming of worst case scenario. You don't go out or you die. You don't leave, you stay in the cave where it's safe or you die. And he would tell these stories at night. And while he was telling them, he would get the paintings on the walls, he'd get like a tomato or something on his hand. And they went out and they weren't around and they weren't safe in a pack. Bam, and they died. And it made me wonder about it made me realize how many of my clients kind of had the same worst case scenario pessimist programming put on them by family, friends, media. Yes, the news. Oh my gosh. And cause them to live in such fear-based mindset. Because if you don't follow what's being taught to you, you die.
Isn't it said that if you're rejected by your tribe, it is equivalent to death?
Yeah. Yep, because when you look at nature, if you don't fit the norms, you don't fit into the pack, you get kicked out, you die. And that's part of the primal drive that causes some of the challenges, especially for growth, because we want to fit in. And if we're growing and we're not fitting into how we grew up, or our tribe, if we don't stick with our tribe, the difference is we have the ability to grow and evolve and change our tribe. In fact, it's, for most people, it's paramount, especially those that feel that need to grow and enhance and become more than what they are and who they're being told they are. That's one of the major things that I get to help people with, is rewriting the old programming and allowing them to see their potential. The vast majority of people, and yes, is a quote, but it's so true, are not afraid of failing. They're afraid of succeeding. Because what if if I succeed, well, then what? Well, then if I become more, then what if my friends and family don't accept me anymore? Yep.
There's this really wonderful technique, and I'm sure we've heard it along the way, and I can't remember who it came from, but when you have a really strong emotion or a really strong memory of sorts coming up, and to really lean into that and to put it on repeat. So you're saying it, in this case, if you're saying it to somebody, you don't think I'm good enough, you don't think I'm good enough, and you keep leaning into it and you keep putting that emotion into it, as you do that, you can actually start to talk to that part, and it must mean, or it feels like, and when it goes back to shame or guilt, it becomes that's where that core is, and that's where that emotion is really driving the bus. And especially because this happens a lot when people lose weight, especially if their family members are bigger and somebody loses weight, you think you're better than us. They're shaming them for trying to take care of themselves. They're putting all the shame and all this guilt, and that weight of it quite literally goes on to that person if they don't know how to take it and release it or block it or defend it. And they will quite literally put on that weight to match that guilt and that shame so that they come back up to match. And even in, I don't think it's always necessarily Black in holographic memory resolution, because that feeling, that emotion, when you look at that core, can be anything, but it's almost always heavy or almost always deep and so deep that there's this massive space. So even in holographic memory resolution, what afterwards, you have to fill that space, especially because if it's a space, people will keep eating and eating and eating to try and fill that space.
Correct.
When it comes to shaping downs.
All right, there's Savo joining us on the road. And one of the other things I wanted to pull out of the movie The Croods was Dad was so afraid of losing his oldest daughter, who was starting to wanting to see more of the world. And he makes up this story. You know, it's story time. All right, everybody sit around. Once upon a time, there was this young girl who didn't listen to her dad, and she went out by herself and she died. And the daughter's like, yeah, that was a little too late. That was pretty obvious. I get it, Dad. And I think some of us get lucky enough that at some point we look at friends and family and all of that are trying to hold us back and realize they're doing the best they can with the tools, knowledge, and energy they have available to them. They are also afraid of what we might become. And a lot of parents are so afraid that we're going to get hurt. And some are so afraid that they protect to the point of crushing that growth, stifling that growth. And it can be quite debilitating for the child, especially, heaven forbid, the parent passes on, and now the kid has to figure out, well, okay, now who am I? Versus, I've said it many times, thank you, Mom, for free range parenting. I learned to be quite independent, sometimes to a fault. Ask a few people I've been with. Say it. But yet we need that freedom and that ability to grow, to fall, to realize that we're going to survive and build those skill sets that will protect us out when we're dealing with humans in their natural environment. And I'm going to let this segue right into the other movie, Wizard of Oz. One of my clients today had this massive download this weekend and couldn't wait to share it with me. And it came about Wizard of Oz and my onstage personality protocol. And her download was Wizard of Oz was basically a movie about a young girl addressing all of her personality traits inside of her. And when she constantly said, "There's no place like home, no place like home" at the end, it was her affirmation that I'm here, I am home. All of this is inside of me. I have control. So the good witch and the bad witch, the ones that sit on your shoulder and tell you what to do and what to think. Flying monkeys, those less than positive thoughts that chase you down, negative thinking. Scarecrow, being told that you're not smart enough. And yet at the end, he found out that he was the cowardly lion, being too afraid to go out and do something, do things, especially for yourself. The Tin Man, yeah. And being told that you have to follow the yellow brick road. That's where you have to go. And what was the other one? The party place, where people sometimes turn to drugs to get away from dealing with their issues. Yeah, I was like,
Holy cow.
yeah. Puts a little different spin on
Oh,
the
yeah.
movie, especially with the, if any of you have understood my protocol about all of our different personalities. We all have different personalities, thank God. We all wear different masks. We're not the same person Saturday night in the club, Sunday morning at church, Monday afternoon in the business meeting, Thursday night taking the kids to their soccer game. We all wear different masks, thank God. And like I've said a couple of times before, when do multiple personalities become what is referred to as multiple personality disorder? When some of those, one or more of those personalities don't fit the community standards at the time. You take a Navy SEAL on a mission, they've got a very distinct personality trait. But if it happens in your small town and they're not a SEAL and it wasn't a mission, that's a personality disorder. If you have a loud, boisterous, fun personality like Robin Williams, bless his soul, but you use it in church and you're not the pastor, and so I tell people there are very few personalities that are completely bad or inappropriate. There will always be some. That's dark side, and that's what we protect people from. But for the most part, understanding how many different personalities there are is also quite enlightening, because you get to understand that if you can make up that many different personalities, that many facets of you, there's room for one more. And if you can make one more, there'll be room for one more after that. And you can keep working on yourself, improving yourself continuously until the end of days. That's why in my class, Identity Management University, like to call IMU, we teach you how to identify what it is that you're looking for, what you're looking to become, and finding those ingredients, I'll refer to them, in your pantry. And now when you look at the past two movies that we talked about, Croods and Wizard of Oz, there are so many different personality sections in there that you can look back and start to identify, how did they affect me? Did I have an overbearing parent or friend or mentor that let me know that I have to be scared all the time because if I do something wrong, you die? Or did I look at it and go, that's your program? That's how you were raised. That doesn't have to be me. I can grow beyond that. And looking at the Wizard of Oz and going, who's my wicked witch? Who's the nasty neighbor that I died 3 times this week alone? Hey, well, I'm glad you're back for another round. Let's keep that to a minimum, please. We like you on here, Elijah. But once you start identifying the traits, the personalities, the things that are in there, you can also start identifying what you want to improve, what you consider to be an asset, what you consider to be holding you back. You're not a tree, you can move. You're not chiseled in stone, you can change. Any ahas, epiphanies, comments on that so far?
I have a question.
Good.
What do people like to do when the other characters are saying things that are not what you would consider to be in alignment, that are saying hurtful things or things that people would say, oh, you're selfish for doing that. You're selfish for putting yourself first. What are some of the things that you guys respond with? How else do you continue to acknowledge it? Especially because I think a lot of people are always doing the best that they can with the tools, time, and knowledge that they have, as are we. And then I think that we often have to be the eagle that has to fly above constantly to get away from that energy, or to at least bring yourself up and be like, I see you, no, you can't do better. And now I have to go on a different path.
First off, airplane response.
Oxygen mask first.
When stuff happens, put the mask on you first. And then one of the things from my session today also was, the more you fall in love with yourself and the more you do work on yourself, the more you realize that they are reacting to you on something that bothers them. When they say something that triggers you, and I hate that word, but
becoming a buzzword.
Yeah, right. It's something to look inward and find out why. What is it about that? What is it about when they did that, or how they did that, that it allowed it to get to me. And the more you fall in love with every aspect of yourself, the harder it will be for outside sources to attack you in that way. You start becoming more of an empath, more empathetic, looking at them going, wow, somewhere there's a story. And I'm sad that you feel that way, or that you feel obligated to act in that manner. But that's not me. That's you. And Elijah said, you've got a stock response for such things? We got a chance to share, brother? We'll let him get his stuff set up, but
While we're waiting.
Hello.
There you go.
Sorry. Holly, do you want to go? You can go ahead.
Go.
Okay. I really emphasize the first word. And it goes something like this. That, my dear friend, is strictly a matter of opinion.
yes. And what do we
And
know
if they
about
want-
opinions?
If they want the follow-up, then the follow-up is when it comes to opinions, the only one that matters is my own.
Could you say that one more time, please?
That, my dear friend, is strictly a matter of opinion. And when it comes to opinions, the only one that really matters is my own.
There you go. And if I'm feeling extra salty, I'll tell them, yeah, you know, opinions are kind of like buttholes. Everybody's got one. Some are kind of stinky and dirty. And that one kind of stinks.
Okay, so what do you do when you're trying to diffuse the fire, not add
Not playing
lighter
it.
fluid to the fire?
Again,
Turn
understand.
around and walk away. You know what the cold shoulder is?
Yes.
Yeah, you literally give them the cold shoulder. I mean, I missed the context. I don't really know what the question is. I heard you say a little bit about when someone says that you're being selfish for taking care of yourself first, and that's what I'm responding to because I don't hear anything before that. So that's kind of what I'm responding to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, guys.
Hey,
I
Zebel.
would like to say something about that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
So I really like what Elijah said. Elijah, that was a good one. I think we should all stop and take a minute to check that down and have a minute of silent meditation to install that. That was great, man. And also there is a deep shadow work though the person needs to do, because the real question is, what is it about them that's not letting them have that self-love in their life, and who took that away from them, when, how, and where? And that's their work. And just by recognizing it's their shadow, maybe they're the ones who try to put other people first, expecting them to do the same. Just because they don't believe they should take care of themselves, put the masks on themselves first, like in the airplane, and the metaphors like that will probably help the person understand, give them a little story. But essentially, it's their work and it's their shadow.
Yep. Exactly.
If you could do a Cockney accent, you could say, "Who took the jam out of your donut?"
Awesome. Holly.
That's okay. So TJ talks a lot about changing professions. I have changed tribes I'm on my 5th tribe, I would say, at this point, which, and I mean, to be fair, it's not necessarily that they don't grow or whatever. Maybe they're growing in a different direction and I'm growing in a different direction. But, we talk about the castle too, and who's allowed on the grounds versus who's allowed in the inner sanctum, so to speak. If somebody's saying that sort of thing to me, I know some people, that's their attitude towards life. And, maybe they're a family member. They're still allowed on the castle grounds. The first thing I'm asking myself is, and I mean, sometimes you just can't, a complete stranger might be walking up and saying it to you. But the first thing that I think when someone says that to me is, you are not in my tribe. You are not allowed into the inner sanctum. You're not allowed to be part of my journey. Because when I'm in my journey, I'm very vulnerable and I need people who are going to build me up, people who are going to help me along that journey. When I'm, and so that thought of, I don't cast my pearls before swine. When I'm talking about the really important things, the things that are very sacred to me, those sorts of things, don't share that with just anyone. And this person has just shown you who they are, and they've shown you they don't deserve to know the details of your journey. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have room to grow and they couldn't become that person later or whatever the case may be. But now I will say this too. It's different if this is someone who has genuine desire to grow and they're coming to me for advice. And then they're saying, I don't have the right. It's selfish for me to do this. I'm going to have very difficult feedback. But, if they're saying that to me about my journey, this is somebody that their input doesn't matter. It's not important. It's not informed. And they are not allowed in the inner sanctum.
And I appreciate you sharing that, because it reminded me of something else that a lot of times I like to reframe, especially for my clients, and remind them the words will only have the amount of energy and meaning that you give to them. If the same thing was said to you by some random drunk meth head on the sidewalk curb while you're walking by, how much would it affect you? Then what is it about their attack, their story? Is it true? Is it relevant? Is it a cheap shot? Are they doing it out of love, to hurt, out of malice, out of misunderstanding? That's why the more work you do on yourself and the more you can find ways to fall in love with who you are, the more bulletproof you become to these types of verbal attacks. Because you look at the person, you're like, oh, wow, you must really be hurting. I don't even believe what you just said. So you must be saying it for some reason that I don't understand and I don't have to, because I know it's not true. And like you said, Holly, about the tribes, there will be certain tribes that you got to deal with. Family, old friends, stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that you have to invest large amounts of time. And if you know you're going into a toxic environment, you can now have the ability to suit up in armor. Kind of like my metaphor about getting, and Savo, I'm sure can attest to this, getting hit hard on the street when you're not expecting it is probably a lot more damaging than getting hit hard when you're in the MMA ring, because you're expecting the blows. And there are certain people that when you get around, they are so hurt inside, they're so angry with life, whatever, that even if you ignore them, or especially if you ignore them, they get even angrier because they need a sparring partner. They need somebody to dump this toxic energy because they don't know how to take care of it themselves. And especially if you're an empath and somebody who's a non-confrontationalist, oh, they love having you in the ring. They get to beat you up and you don't fight back. And a lot of them, you'll notice, love to unload, don't realize that you are reeling from that for a week or 2 weeks, replaying what they said, arguing with them in your head, all the different scenarios. And they were over it 5 minutes after they did it. Because to them, they didn't care. They just wanted to get this toxic energy off. Anybody, and you happen to be the one closest enough for them to toss in the ring. And I've had a few people like that, and then they get mad when you don't call them anymore. Like, well, you said some pretty wicked things. Well, yeah, but I'm over that. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not. Well, but I didn't mean it that way. I was just mad. I know. And you're going to have to learn better ways to deal with that mad. Go yell at a tree, poor tree. But you know, I'm not going to be your sparring partner anymore. I've got better things to do. I love myself too much to do that. And sometimes we have to finally get to a point where maybe we just look at them and go, just shut up. Shut up. I'm done with your, and I've had to do that a few times, and they're like, whoa, what are you getting so wound up for? Like, have you listened to yourself lately? Stop. Let's go by the golden rule. If you can't say anything nice, don't say a damn thing at all. And we'll all enjoy your silence for the next year or whatever. Protect the house, protect yourself, protect your energy. Because at the end of the day, it's your kingdom that you have to live in your entire life. And if you allow people to toss feces all over your streets and all over your kingdom, they don't care because they can go back home, but you have to deal with all of that in your kingdom. And there are plenty of people on this planet that will treat your kingdom with respect. And they will help build you up. So be selective. And speaking of that, there was one other topic that I was going to bring up, and this is probably a great segue into it, and it's prison or sanctuary. And that was another download from today, where because my client had such a hard time loving themselves, they hated to be alone. They couldn't stand their house because it reminded them of how much they were alone, or they felt alone. They thought they were alone. And now with all the work they've done on themselves, and they're falling more and more in love with themselves, guess what magically happened on their property? They found that they actually enjoy being home. They don't have to go out as much anymore. They've learned to meditate. They've learned to enjoy what they've created. And they're very mindful of what they do to their environment. The type of audio that's being played throughout the property, what they listen to all day. And now it has become an amazing sanctuary. Not only the building, not only the property, but the space inside of them as well. Their body and their mind are no longer a prison. It's the sanctuary where they live and grow. And they build themselves up as well. And they get to do house cleaning, housekeeping, and home improvements on themselves constantly. And the more they do it, the more they like what they're seeing. And I think we've all seen, hopefully, at least one representative or representation of somebody who's gotten to this point. You can feel their energy. They're the kind of people that walk into a room, and even if you don't know that they walked in the room, the flowers perk up and smell better. Thanks, Savo. Appreciate you dropping in, brother. And what's the difference in them? A lot of times it's simply self-love, self-care, and their world and all that is surrounding them is becoming a sanctuary. They guard their energy, they guard their words, they guard their self-talk. They pay close attention to the people that are around them and decide, are they adding or are they taking? Are they adding to my energy or are they taking my energy? Are they adding to my life or are they taking away from my life? Is what I'm doing for income adding to my life and to the world? Or is it taking up my time in exchange for some money so that I can stay off the streets and eat food? I know, because I've had both of those jobs. To close this hour out, it's mainly how many different ways can you protect all that is you? Your masks, your personality, your home, your sanctuary, your body, how can you identify what is serving you and what you can change and what you can build on, what you can improve. Because life's too short to not live as happy as possible. Any ahas, epiphanies, comments on that in the last couple of minutes before you guys get to
That's something real fast. It just kind of came to my mind while you're saying it. It only kind of applies, but as for keeping ourselves safe, it's not just about keeping the bad stuff to a minimum. So I don't know how many of you have heard of the concept of the Lesotho line, but basically it's the idea that you probably heard the concept, even if you don't know the name of it. That you need to have 7 positive interactions for every 1 negative to overcome it, basically. And I think, you know, whether it's we're talking about tribe, whether we're talking about wherever we're at, I think as long as we're making sure that we are checking in this, you know, 7 times with people in our tribe that support us to get the truth, will help inoculate us against the 1 in 7 times that we have somebody who's a little bit nasty, who doesn't want to be a part of our group, you know, whatever it is, tears us down. And if we want to be in that happy place, if we want to be in that place where we love the world, love ourselves, kind of thing.
Yep. Very good point. I'm glad you shared that. Anybody else? Okay.
It feels very like Jim Rohn, stand guard at the doorway of your mind, which I'm a big fan of. Sometimes when I think probably when you're in a less than positive state, it seems like you have a lot to be managing. Versus when you're in a positive state and you're like, okay, that will manage this. That's fine. I'm protected here. I know I'm focused on this, and this is where I'm going. Or you're on your yellow brick road, or you're off in the poppies or in the woods.
Exactly. But the more we can self-regulate, self-check, always be testing, constantly checking in with ourselves, where we at, how we doing, the easier it is to self-correct when needed. I think I think too many people kind of like free flow and just kind of meander their way through life, and then all of a sudden 20, 30 years, and they're like, what, how did I get here? Or they'll run across somebody that's been doing a number of years of self work, especially if they knew them back before they started, and they're like, they're different. Like, why are they so different? Like, I tried to gossip with them and they just kind of went, you know, let's talk about something worthwhile. Or when I started talking about, you know, down about myself, about all of this other stuff, they helped me, they corrected me, but they wouldn't swim in the muck of the whatever I was putting out there. And I think that's a good goal, a great destination to get to where you can be that. I don't even know what word to describe it. I don't want to say advanced, but in a way it is. It is an advanced form of thinking. And it's certainly an advanced form of self-love. And that tops us off right at the top of the first hour. So glad you guys are along. Now it's
You
time.
made it through all 3.
Actually, I did 4. Can you believe that? Yes. And if this is your first time watching or the first time you've watched one of the recordings, go back, check some of the other ones. You'll understand that comment, because usually I only get to the first 2 and we have to hold one over. But now, in true triple T fashion, it is time for open platform, open mic, open topic. What do you guys have? Let's have some fun. Who's got something?
And I'm sure a million people have things, but I've been thinking a lot about the difference between, so when we encounter something difficult, it seems like, and I'm talking extra difficult, not just normal difficult, it seems like it results for most people in, well, one of 3, I guess. I was gonna say 2, but 3 things. So it could lead to growth. It could wake somebody up and then they just choose to go back to sleep again. That was the one I was discounting. Or it could also lead to an installation of a trauma. And I'm just kind of curious, what are your opinions about why the different responses, what leads to the 3 different responses, and how do we prepare ourselves so that it could lead more to growth, that sort of thing, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of a word salad there, but hopefully it made sense.
And in true triple T fashion, in the second hour, those on the call get to answer before I do. So who's got something for Holly?
Holly, can you repeat it once more? When things are challenging, when things are difficult.
So when we come up against something that's challenging, pushes us to our limits, and let's assume it's somebody who likes growth. So we're gonna ignore the I respond and then I go right back to where I was again. Let's just ignore that part of it. So it either wakes somebody up and helps them grow and get stronger, become something, overcome something, learn new skills, or sometimes it also installs a new trauma. So what leads the difference between this turned into growth versus this turned into trauma? And then also once we've experienced it, what are the best ways to respond to it so that it's more likely to lead to growth? Or if it does install trauma, we can clean that up quickly.
Great question. Anybody got something for her? Come on.
I don't know if somebody else is going to go first.
I was going, excuse my camera, not on yet. I was going to say, I think an awful lot of it comes down to the state that the person is in when that triggering event happens. That if you're in a good frame, feeling strong, it's more likely to become a growthful event. Whereas if you're, if it's the culmination of a whole load of other things that have not been going right, it can more easily turn into trauma. And I mean, we know how malleable we are and how malleable our states are. And I think if there's been a number of triggering incidents, it's much more difficult to keep it in the positive light, in the growthful light. And sometimes you just need time. In the midst of the triggering event, you're usually highly reactive. And I guess that can depend on what the triggering event is, how close it is to your heart, and what you hold dear to you. So I think all those play a factor in that differentiation. But thank goodness, we are able to go back and rework that situation or reverse that situation with the skills that we've been given. We're not stuck with that situation. So I guess in some respects that doesn't matter. I don't know whether that really gives an answer, but that's the best I've got for now.
Great answer. Thanks for sharing, Fran. Appreciate you.
I agree. I love what I love what Fran said. especially because I do think it depends on the state that we're in at the time. But even if you go back to SRUs, how drained are you at the time? Who is it coming from? What position are you in? There's so many different things. If somebody comes in and abruptly is attacking you and you're already down lower, it's going to trigger you differently than if you were standing and somebody came at you with a different tone, especially because it's dependent on each person's nervous system. When somebody talks to me in a different tone, somebody else may hear a completely different response. And first, what I hear is completely interpreted differently. One thing I did just recently was in something that really stuck in my mind. I mentioned this, I think, earlier in the call. I just kept repeating how their phrase or like that I was angry at them. And as I leaned more into it, it actually was even deeper than anger. It went all the way down to shame and to that you were shaming me. You made me feel such and such. When you can get into it must mean it makes me feel, that's where that power is that you want to get back. And however you can give it back to that person, even how might I get rid of this? How might I give this over to the person? And allowing yourself to maneuver through that, as uncomfortable as it is, but it really does help get that off of your nervous system, which I think is the most important. And then even, especially if it's, rather than thinking of it, if it was a growth or if it's a trauma, whichever, encapsulating it, I will put a casing around it. Like I'll put a steel forest case around the person and the energy that it came from. And then I'll keep maneuvering it from there and getting it more and more away from my system so that I can actually calm down and then address it however I need to. That seems to be the most beneficial. And then from that standpoint, if it was what you consider like intense, traumatic, or just overwhelming, then I can move to growth and I can move to seeing it in a different perspective versus one or the other. I might get to growth, but I might have to go through ick before I can get to growth.
Another great answer. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else before I put my 2 cents on the table? I came up with 3 words: programming, perception, and labeling. What we've been taught, what programs have been put on us, whether through friends, family, outside sources, media, whatever, will have a large effect on how we perceive what has happened. Also, the activity and the scenario that it's created in allows the perception of how bad it was. Like when you look at a lot of athletes, especially like football players, stuff like that, some of the hits that they take are the equivalent of being hit by an automobile at 30 miles an hour. But because they're playing, they're expecting it, they get up and they do it again and again and again. And yet some people, when caught off guard in being hit by a car as slow as 5 miles an hour, and they've been taught by their parents, look out for the car, you're gonna die. And they get bumped and they look and they see this massive machine, near-death experience. Which brings us to labeling. Nothing means anything until you give it a label. And all too often, we will stick with the very first label that appears. they said that, and that must mean, oh. And oftentimes when I work with clients, I'll go, the words don't have any energy in them. I prove it all the time. It was the label and the recording and the way you recorded it that created the damage that you perceived. When I go back and help them edit the recording, I've had clients who for years were absolutely devastated, suffering by something that was said to them. And don't get me wrong, some of the stuff I've heard through clients was vicious, vile, nasty. Should not be said to, and a lot of times it was from obviously friends, family, spouses. That's why they gave it so much energy. And I would make them say it back to me exactly the way they recorded it. I want to hear the volume, the tone, the energy in that recording, just the way you recorded it. Sometimes it'll take a bit for me to get them to that point where they know that they're safe, but it just devastating. And then I'll have them say the exact same words in a couple of different, like they have to say it in Goofy's voice. They're like, what? Oh, I think you're and they're like, and they'll crack up, and I'll go ahead, say those words to me in Goofy's voice. Then I'll have them say it to me using Mickey Mouse's voice. And by the time I get to having them say the exact same nasty, vile words in Minnie Mouse's voice, they're actually giggling while they're saying these words. And I point out to them, it wasn't the words. It was the way you recorded them and the energy that you attached to them. Now I want you to take the same recording, and instead of the person who said it, I want you to replace that person with a homeless drunk meth head sitting on the sidewalk, and have them say it to you, and notice how much energy is there. And by that time, they're like, pfft. So if you have that ability to take the old recordings, edit them down to where you can actually laugh at what was said, or absolutely shrug off and have some sympathy towards the person who said it, why not do it for as many limiting recordings, situations, possibilities as possible? You have the power. Nothing means anything until you give it a label.
I love what you say about it can depend on who it's from as well, because that is a huge impact on the power of what is being said and whether you're going to keep it as a trauma or not.
And even if it's a very close loved one, they're still a human being. And doing the best they can at the time with the tools, knowledge, and energy they have available to them. I've gotten much better at giving people a lot more room on certain things because I don't know what they're going through. I don't know their story. Sometimes I do. Sometimes you know that somebody just went through something They're having a bad day. Doesn't matter if the bad day is justified or not, whether you understand it or not, and then they attack you. You have the ability to go, this isn't about me at all. And you can label it the way you want to and decide what it is. And albeit, I ain't gonna lie, it does take practice.
Another factor that can affect trauma or no trauma is the emotional state of the other person as well, because emotional states are catching, especially in highly charged situations. So keeping your own state of calm when other people around you are freaking out is really hard. And, you know, having to try and remember to do things like your amygdala hijack avoidance exercises, which is basically focusing on your breath and counting if you can, or square breathing, so that it's breathe 1, 2, 3, 4, in, hold 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 1, 2, 3, 4. The act of counting overrides the amygdala hijack quite effectively, and the breathing and focusing on your breath. So, you know, the trauma management, focus on your breath and let the emotions fade, works.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Great point. And for those of you that don't understand breath work, please look into it. And when you said trauma management, it brought up another very, very important phrase. The worst is over. You've survived. The worst part is over. You've survived. And I've had to use this many times in accident situations. In fact, one night out right in front of our house, head-on collision. Luckily, nobody got injured, but it was bad enough, and everybody was majorly shooken up, and it was a perfect time for me to do what I do. I came around, and there were three different drivers. 2 vehicles hit each other very hard, but luckily, the way they did it, both of the drivers were not harmed. And the third driver, it was so close that she was like freaking out. First thing I said to him, the worst is over, you've survived. The worst is over, you survived. Now repeat to me, the worst is over, I've survived. And just that brought them down. I said, so now that the worst is over and you've survived, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I got them thinking about the future. And by the time that the first responders showed up, I got 3 people in this accident scene that looks like somebody should have been, you know, dead. And the 3 people like, all right, well, what information do you need? 2 of them are waiting for a ride home, and the other person is just like, I'll tell you what I saw, and I'm going to go home because I got to work in the morning.
I love the focusing on the future and what you're going to do for the rest of the life, because then that can totally reframe it into, look, you've been given a fresh sheet. You can do whatever you like. You've been given a new opportunity at life. So enjoy it.
Yeah.
They're all great answers. I do have a follow-up question.
Perfect.
What if working with someone, and I know this would be unusual, but what if you're working with someone in a situation like, for instance, if you were with someone, Viktor Frankl in the Holocaust, and you're working with other prisoners, or maybe you're in a situation where you're coaching someone who's 12 years old who lives in an abusive household, and the police and the counselors don't believe that abuse is going on, so they're forcing him to stay in the household. It's a situation where the worst isn't over. You know worse is coming. Is there a way that you can still help in that situation and give them the tools that they need to learn to keep it in a growth place rather than going to a trauma place?
It's still perception. Viktor Frankl pointed out perfectly that even in the absolute situation that he was in, that we hope nobody ever has to witness, live, go through, and understand, he allowed himself to become in a state of mind where seeing the fly in the horrific excuse of what they called food, he was able to look at it and see the beauty of the fly. Because that was his world right there, right now. And I don't know if I'd have been strong enough to do it, but I know that I'm much better equipped today than I've ever been in my entire life.
I'd like to add some parts from this. From my own experience, I had some really bad times, certainly in my first marriage. And the first step is actually gaining the skill of dissociation. And sometimes you just got to use that as a practical tool of getting the essence of you out of the fire to protect your inner layers. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional here.
No, it's okay.
Disassociation can be a really good and useful tool. I would do a visualization in the worst of times where I actually hid me right in the center of one of my molars, one of my teeth, because then I didn't have to deal directly with what was going on at the time. And, you know, that's not a forever situation, but it's a survive now, deal with it later.
Yes.
And then with the tools that we have now, what more can you do? And it's only biding your time until you're not in that situation. If you can survive it and find the tools within you to survive the shit that's going on right now. The physical pain is definitely usefully affected by disassociation. It's not happening to you, it's happening to somebody else or this puppet that you are, but you're safe inside. Keeping you safe inside or away is the way to survive, in my opinion. I'm sure there's others, but that was what I did.
And I'm sure somebody needs to hear that. That's why this is being recorded, because there's too much of that happening. The other thing that I like is the what time is it right now protocol. And I know you guys have heard this before, but if for the people that are watching the recording for the first time, I will ask them, or I'll tell them, I'm going to ask you a question twice because I want your conscious and your subconscious to both fully comprehend what I'm pointing out. I'll ask them, what is the exact time and date, including the year, right now? They'll look and they're like, oh, it's 7:24 p.m., 8:29:23. And I'll repeat it to them. Yes, it's 7:24 p.m., August 29th, 2023. And the fact that you and I can have this conversation right now, that you can hear my voice, means that you have survived everything life has ever thrown at you There's not one single thing from your past that you are not stronger than. No matter how horrific it may have been at the time, you survived. So again, what is the exact time and date right now? And oftentimes it'll take more than a minute for me to go through that, and they'll go, okay, it's 7:25 p.m., August 29th, 2023. Yes, it is 7:25 p.m., August 29th, 2023. And again, the fact that you can hear my voice, that we can interact, that we can talk, means that you have survived 100% of everything life has ever thrown at you. There's not one single thing from your past that you are not stronger than. And all the lessons that you've gathered from it have not only made you exactly who you are today, but they will protect and push you forward into who you can become tomorrow and beyond that.
Me shooting back to me, and my little actually having the ability to separate the essence of you, the spiritual you, what makes you you from your physical being can be a useful skill as well. And you know, if it takes a really horrible situation to enable you to do that, well, you've got another skill up your sleeve. But the physical body might be damageable, but you are not. And knowing that is powerful as well.
It is.
No, it's the four walls do not a prison make, and your body is not who you are. It is in one aspect, but it's not the essence of you. So you're more than what's going on around you. So it can't touch you.
Lenore asked if you could elaborate on what you consider the essence.
Okay. When you think of you, what do you think of? You've got your body, you've got your interaction, your interface with the world. Your senses can touch the things around you. You can feel discomfort if you like. You can pinch yourself and it's not comfortable. But how much of that is the essence of you? Does that affect? Can you pinch your thoughts and your feelings and your identity? Can you do that physically? You may be able to affect it by making the physical body unhappy and uncomfortable, but that's not who you are. Where is the thinking? Where is the spirit of you? Can you be confined by your own physical body? When you go into hypnosis or meditate, that's when you focus on the essence of who you are. When the outside world means nothing, you find the real you. And you can, in that arena, your imagination is your limit. You can make it hell or you can make it heaven. It's a matter of choice then. The essence of who you are is what drives you. It's who's driving the machine. Like, you've seen kids' movies where you've got these mechatrons or whatever, and you sit in the head and you drive this body. That's what we are. We are not our body. We are fortunate enough to have a body to move around in, but that's not who we are. When you're a baby, maybe your thought processes or your recollection of your thought processes aren't so clear, but the spirit of you is still being formed and growing but with the physical body, and who you are now and who you will be in 5 years' time, it's separate from your body. I don't know whether that's explained what my perception of this is any better, but it's who's driving the machine and what you choose to focus on to drive that machine.
It was the second time that I heard this word used in this way this week. So I found it very, very interesting. So that's why I asked you to elaborate. Do you consider it the same as soul, or the same as your higher self, or do you consider it separate? And I feel like I've spent so long trying to come into my body, trying to understand my body, that to separate it, and to call it the essence, I haven't gotten to that word. So I don't know what other label you might have been calling it this whole time.
I think that's a really tricky one, but I'd probably say yes to all of the above.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's however you perceive it. And maybe it is your spirit, maybe it is your soul, maybe it's your conscious mind and your unconscious mind and your higher self. And you can move into and out of all of those aspects, whether it's your higher self with your higher goal for life and humanity and the world and the universe, or whether it's the inner being of who's directly driving this machine, your own identity of who you are. And that part of you is so fluid that I don't think you can confine it, because what can I find as an analogy that you can take it down to the most immediate essence, and you can take it out to the biggest expansion of you as God, or whatever you perceive God or the greater spirit to be, and everything in between. So it's just where you focus your attention that's relevant. And you can do that anytime, anywhere, and snap yourself out of a trauma by just disassociating from your physical and taking the higher view. I mean, there may have been times in your life where, you know, you've sort of seen your physical body panicking and scrabbling around down below, and you've somehow also got an overview of what's going on and an impression of the other people around you and their interaction with that body and that panic or that distress. And one of my meditation or hypnosis exercises are that you actually take yourself physically out of your body. That's a contradiction. You take the essence of you out of your body so you can actually look down on yourself as a separate being, see the top of your head, and then move up higher and higher. And as you move up higher and higher, you may notice that your compassion increases, but your attachment decreases. That it's something interesting happening below you, like looking at ants crawling on the ground. But you may have great compassion for them, bigger compassion than you would have if you were here and now and driving the bus, this being the bus. But the higher you go, the more you tend to connect to the divine, and the less you tend to be connected to the individual scrabbling on earth. I hope that explains it, what my perception a bit, but it's a hard thing to describe.
You did it beautifully. Thank you.
To add to that quickly, understand that we have the ability to have thoughts about our thoughts, which allows us the freedom or the prison to analyze and step out and look from different directions, different angles. Just like with my horseshoe protocol, when people are too afraid to face a fear or a trauma or something from behind, and I will simply have them disassociate and step back and look at the person in front of them that's dealing with the situation, and then keep doing that and in the shape of a horseshoe until they are shoulder to shoulder with the person who's actually dealing with the trauma, but their back is to the trauma. And they can either talk through the horseshoe to the person that's experiencing it, dealing with it, or because they're shoulder to shoulder, they now have the freedom to go, okay, so what's going on? Are we doing okay? Is there anything I need to know? And they can advise the person that's dealing with the trauma. Even though it's them, it's 5 to 8 layers of separation where they are completely safe, because it's not them that's dealing with it, it's their stronger one that is there that can handle it. And once everything's been dealt with, handled, then they can walk forward and reunite all of the different parts of the different detachments that they did to protect themselves. Does that make sense? I kind of threw that out quick.
Absolutely. And after a comment like that, you know, what more can you say about anything?
Lots of stuff. Welcome to our world, right? Welcome to our playground. But the other part that I'm going to throw out there is some people build those layers up for protection, but they forget that it's for protection. It becomes their world. And that's where some of them will have multiple personalities, and a certain personality was designed as a protection device. And when we're working with clients that have stuff like that, we, as agents of change, will recognize that that entity, that personality, was created for a function. And you deal with that personality just like another living, breathing person in front of you. Ask them why they were created, what was it about, and oftentimes, once you've, I was going to say fix the problem, that personality has the opportunity to disappear because they were only there as a protection mechanism. Fran, you got your hand up?
Yeah, it's the protection mechanism, which also has a not so fantastic side in that because you've had cause to learn those skills, it's sometimes hard to let them down with people who you should be trusting and allow into your space. And it does tend to make certainly me a person who keeps people out there, because I don't necessarily want to have people in my very personal space, emotionally and sometimes physically. So it makes the more intimate and personal contacts more difficult, perhaps. Any comments from you on that?
When I'm working with clients, especially in the wait to date protocol, I have to remind them that those things happened to another person, another version of you that has survived. You've made it this far. You did the best you could at the time with the tools, knowledge, and energy available to you. And you survived, which means no matter how horrific those things happened to those versions of you, you were stronger than anything that happened. And now you can, as a new person today, you can go in and still become anything that you want to. Because you have tools, knowledge, and energy now that you've never had before. And now if you work on yourself and learn ways to improve yourself and improve ways to test those that you are allowing in your tribe and test those that are possible suitors to be your king or queen, the chances of what happened to those versions in the past happening again have been greatly diminished. And however, worst case scenario, if that same person shows up in a different meat suit, you know what it smells like, looks like, acts like, feels like, and you know what you would have, should have, could have wanted to do back then, and you have the knowledge, energy, and tools that you didn't have back then to say, oh, I've been in this play before, didn't like how it ended, rewriting the script. You're not in it. Have a nice day. Wish you the best of luck. Off of my kingdom. And that's why it's so important for me to make sure that my clients write their journals as detailed as possible, what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. It becomes a living document. And now I've got clients that are doing it for their person, their job, and their tribe, because they're recreating their world. And I ask them to keep going through it as often as they have the chance to, because now they are putting themselves into research mode. When you're out and about and you see couples interacting, what'd you like, what didn't you like? When you see singles that have pretty much any person, if something about somebody stands out, what was it and why? And is it something that I would like to be or something I don't want to be? If it's somebody who's in the same, could be a possible suitor, could be my king or my queen, what was it about them that stood out? Whether I liked it or didn't like it. And we become researchers of the environment that we're in. And as you start building your journal about this, you will also learn a lot more about yourself. If this is what I expect of my partner, what areas of my life can I improve upon so that I am the best possible suitor for them? If this is what I'm looking for in my tribe, what can I improve upon to bring value to the table, value to the group, value to the tribe? If this is the job that I'm looking for, what can I work on in my spare time, or possibly even at work, to become more marketable, to be hired by something, to get put into a position where this is what I get to do to provide for myself? Even my wife, who is she's a recruiter, can't think of the first word. Not elite, but like a corporate recruiter, high-level recruiter. And there'll be a lot of applicants that are going for these high-level jobs. And sometimes she'll build relationships with these people because she helps coach some of them. And they may not get the job that they wanted, and they'll go, okay, what could I have worked on? What could I have improved upon? What can I do better next time? And she'll give them a list of things that they could work on. Some of them, a lot of them, still have a job. Those of you that know me really well, what do I say about jobs? I was looking for a job when I got this one.
I'd like to add a little bit about, or ask a question.
Yes.
Especially of you with your wait to date type protocols and the applications all through your life. How can you be comfortable being vulnerable and being, yeah, look, this is me. If you want to kick me, I can take it. It's not going to hurt me.
Anybody else got a quick answer before
I'll jump in with a couple things. So first of all, I think when you have choices, you're less vulnerable. So if you've got a tribe of great people and you're looking to add people to your tribe and they're not a good match, no big deal. If you have no tribe and they're the only person you know, you're going to be desperate to get them in your group. You're going to be desperate to hold on to them no matter how many boundaries they cross, no matter how abusive they become. They're the one person that's paying any attention to you at all. So anyway, step one, if you've got several options, you're not going to be as desperate and reliant on one. And then the other thing that kind of was coming up through everything we were discussing is this concept that I've seen a lot of people who've been growing and going to the next step and being vulnerable. And there are people that if you let them in, that they are going to try to take advantage of that. They're going to try to hurt you. But there's two things to do with that. First of all, there's this idea of invest then test that I got from Matthew Hussey, that you invest a little bit of vulnerability. You don't have to go all in, see what they do with it. And then if they do well, invest a little bit more, go a little bit more. So that, and what most people do is they reverse that. They test and then they invest. And so they're not willing to go first. They're filtering out people who probably deserve to be in their group. And then the only people who are left, it goes back to that desperation. There's only a handful of narcissists who are willing to start it from a bad place. You know, they're not all narcissists, but you know, the people you're going to attract are going to be bad actors because they're willing to play the part versus normal people. The other thing though, so you're doing this investing testing, so you don't have to let them all in. But the other thing is, if you can find one good person, they will put your heart together every single time. So you might have all these other people who keep tearing up your heart, but you go back to that person, trust them with your heart, and they will put it back together every single time. So it's just about getting a handful of those people in your world that are capable of putting you back together, and nothing can really hurt you. And one of the things that I've noticed is that there are some people, whether it's dating, whether it's friends, whether it's career, whatever, it actually is kind of dangerous because they genuinely don't know how to filter because they haven't practiced at all. And I don't know if this is 100% true, but every person I've been watching from a distance, it seems like the universe puts what I call protectors in their world. And I don't even know if these people know that those protectors are keeping an eye on them. But it might be, for instance, a girl who hasn't dated enough to know which guys are not safe. Well, she's surrounded by people who are keeping an eye on her because she's being vulnerable, she's meeting people, she's being open to it. And then when the predators come in, those people who are watching her step in and protect her from them going too far. Or if it's somebody who just doesn't know who their friends should be, as soon as those predators come into their world, other people manage to step in and scare them off. And like I said, I'm not even sure that the people who are going through, I think it's the universe's way of saying, hey, if you're willing to grow, you're willing to put yourself out there, this is going to happen in a way that you're going to stay safe, even if you don't realize it. So I don't even know if they realize that they're being looked out for that way. And I don't know if it happens for everybody. I just know I've seen it enough times to know that it's a thing. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. Thank you. For me, because of my background and disassociation, I tend to keep people out there, and I want to be brave enough to say, look, this is who I am. I don't care if you like me or not. I don't care what you do about it. I'm okay no matter what. And having that ability, that bravery to actually show me. And, if you like it, you don't like it, that's fine. I want more of being okay with saying, if you don't like it and you say mean things, that's okay. And not being crushed by it, and being okay with people being open and vulnerable with me. When people get too open and vulnerable with me, I tend to get quite scared, I guess.
Here's what has been working with my clients. One of the main parts of what I labeled to be the wait to date protocol, but I realized today I'm probably going to have to change the name again because it does include job and tribe, is actually setting the time, the 1 year, letting yourself know this is 1 year of research, growth, development, R&D, and I am going to try on as many different options, versions that I can be without apology. I'm going to be whoever I want to be. And some of that's going to be who I've never been before. And I tell my clients, you go on, you need to make this year, these 365 days of research, the most crazy, active, outlandish, outboard, doing things year that you've had so far. Fill in as many minutes of your day with anything, whether it's research, whether it's practicing the trifecta, Echo Talk, 3 Magic Questions, Values and Criteria, whether it's learning about different people. you're researching, if for no other reason than research. And when you see potential suitors, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a king or a queen, the 365 days is that buffer that keeps your emotions intact. Because you're like, ooh, oh, look at you. You knock on, you're marking down. Oh, look at all the boxes you're highlighting, but I still have 8 months to go. So I'm just going to chill, because if you're my person, 8 months are going to fly by just like that. But I'm not going to only be with you, because I'm not allowed to. I'm still going to go out with other people, and I'm going to let you know ahead of time, because I'm in a wait to date protocol. I'll be with you in just a second, Laura. But it's that time frame, that setup, that almost putting yourself on a 1-year mission, sabbatical, whatever you want to call it, so that when 365 days of research are up, you don't come out of that year the same person. Regardless of what's happened in the past, that happened to other people that you were. And the people that you meet along the way, the dates that you've gone on, the research that you did, will show you what's truly important, who you can trust, who you didn't want to trust, who you were like, woo, that was a close one. Yeah. And allow you to understand you are only waiting for your king or your queen. You're not looking for a project. 10 is not good enough. 9 is not good enough. That's somebody else's king or queen. Yeah, and stuff like that. That's beautiful. This is where you start living you. Almost sounds like a Dr. Seuss thing. You have to be the youest you that you can be before anybody comes in to try to tell you who you should be. They don't get to anymore. Lenora. Mic's off.
I'm sorry, I know we're running short on time. One of the things I did recently, Fran, was I was trying to manipulate a different picture, and I couldn't figure out why it felt different in my body one way, and why when I put something else there, it felt different. So when I see you here, or when I see you on how you host your awesome Saturday meetups, you seem like that's who you want to show up as. You seem comfortable, you seem confident, you seem confident, you seem brilliant, and exactly the way that you want. And when you step into another picture, notice where you feel it in your body. Notice what age you suddenly become. Notice how it transforms, because there is a difference. And in my picture, I had to literally blow things up and get them outside. So if you're finding yourself inside maybe a different room, or you're younger, what else is going on? And talk with that part and say, okay, well, you're like this over here. So what's going on over here? And as you're in it, and as you're looking at them, or even I'm happy to guide you through it, or I know you have a squad of people that are thrilled to be there for every second you need them. Something else is different. How can you shift whatever energy is blocking you from showing up where you want to be, how you want to be, compared to where you are? There's something that's flipping back and forth. So I would look at those and, okay, well, I know how I like here. And even, okay, well, I'm really, really comfortable with Elijah and with Aaron. And when they show up, let me move them into this picture. How do I look now? What are they bringing where you feel like you're getting that really strong connection? And then when you connect with other people, what else is going on? So I heard them both in totally different ways. So those were my thoughts on that.
I just want to say thank you for all that. And just to share something, at the weekend, I traveled 7 hours to something that I
Your
wouldn't
art
have
teacher.
doing. Yep, my pottery teacher from years ago, who is an expert on throwing really big pots. And in the chat, I put a picture of pot I did. This was just a sort of demo piece. The top's not right, but it's the technique that was important. And it was so worthwhile. So yes, getting out there, doing things that you wouldn't have normally done. So thank you, TJ. I do weird stuff now. It's wonderful.
But I want you to enjoy becoming wonderfully you. That's what it's all about. Because if you keep dating the same person in a different meat suit, if your tribe just switches people but doesn't evolve, you're not growing. And yes, it does take some vulnerability, but allowing that time frame to where you get to live on the edge. You're going, you know, I know we're running over time, but I just want to, one of the biggest life events that changes people is the near-death event. And they come out of it and all their values and criteria shift dramatically. This is 1 year to figure out if you knew that you had gone through something like that, how different would you live? You've survived everything that's ever happened to you. Heck, you've survived stuff you forgot about. And you've even survived stuff that you didn't even know almost happened to you. But you've also missed out on a whole lot of things that you could have enjoyed. And a lot of people have missed out on a whole lot of living because of the stories that they created from what happened in the past that they survived. They missed out on living because of the things that they survived. So recognize that you've survived and live. Take a big brick, about a 12-pound brick, and toss that baby on the throttle and hang on and scream like a 5-year-old. Hit the sirens and make people get out your way. And if they don't enjoy the show, that's on them. Okay? That brings us to the end of another Triple T. Thank you, thank you, thank you for everybody that tuned in. Linda, we are sending protection energies to all of Florida and everybody that's in the way of Mother Nature's pressure washer. So
Thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you. I think it's going to be fine. He's kind of staying quite a ways offshore, and we'll probably get, a fair amount of rain tonight, but I feel pretty confident. So thank you very much.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. All right. And for the rest of you, those of you watching on YouTube, night, Mom. Love you. And everybody else, I appreciate you so much. I say it every week. Time is the only thing that I cannot produce and give back to you. So for you to share your great commodity with me and this platform means so much to me. So thank you. Take care of yourselves. Go out and make the world a better place. Live life to the absolute fullest that you pack it with every single thing that you can. And be nice to each other. And I will hopefully see you back here in 7.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Yeah.